DHS staff who are here today can introduce ourselves. I'll go first. My name is Cole Sorensen, and I work in the Disability Services Division as the E1MN coordinator. Part of my role is to be a point of contact for all of you when it comes to all things E1MN.
Hi everyone, I'm Christy Howe. I'm the Employment First Lead here at DHS. Do all things employment as well.
We also have Denise Paul here today, who is helping to manage the recording and meeting logistics. Over the last few months, our team has been contacted by several different liaisons and other lead agency staff who have been looking for guidance on what to do in situations where they discover a provider has been delivering services incorrectly. Some of the situations which have come up recently have included providers who are doing employment development and job search activities under employment exploration services, as well as doing pre-vocational activities and paying people sub-minimum wages under day support services. We've heard from you that you want more guidance about what to do in these situations, so we'll spend the first part of our meeting today on this topic. We'll talk about the role of the case manager in doing service monitoring, and then spend some time reviewing what is or is not covered under each employment service, as well as pre-vocational and day support services, so that you all can feel confident in identifying whether services are being delivered in the way they should be. We'll talk a little about what to do when you discover that services are being delivered incorrectly, including questions to ask yourself and where to go for support or to report issues. The other topic for today is provider capacity building. Due to the licensing moratorium, which recently went into effect, we know a lot of you have been thinking about ways to support existing providers to expand their capacity to deliver employment services to as many people as possible. The Minnesota Transformation Initiative has joined us today, and we'll spend some time presenting about how to support providers to strengthen their capacity. It is a fairly full agenda for today. We'll leave as much time as we can for questions, but it's possible there will be more questions than time allows. At our next liaison meeting, the office hours in April, we are planning to provide space to continue discussing these topics. With that, I'll pass it over to Christy to talk about service monitoring.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Just kind of following what Cole said, we've gotten some more questions. I put it at the bottom of the list, but the program integrity concerns I think are a big factor in that. Coming out of the sub-minimum wage annual reports, obviously HSS and the high-risk services are kind of factors in, I think, that may be causing people to look a little more closely, ask some more questions. But really, we always want high quality services and we always want to help people reach their employment goals. So that's really what our focus is, and providing some support on how to do that. Employment is not one of those services, so don't worry, nothing's changed with that. We are not high risk. So this, yeah, so just kind of talking through case manager responsibilities. Everyone has a different type of responsibility when it comes to program monitoring and program integrity. Like DHS, we should be setting clear policy and providing clear TA when there's a question about policy. And case managers is really kind of knowing what the person's goal is, authorizing the correct service, and making sure that case managers are leading those conversations, and not always relying on providers to give the input and the directive on what service is being done. So going back to what the person's goal is and what the corresponding service is. And also, making sure that case managers are monitoring those services through meetings and if the provider is sending like a monthly update over email, which is something you can ask them to do if they're not. I think it can be really helpful. There's progress reports, all of that stuff. And oh, requesting more details. So if you haven't gotten an update or you're kind of reaching a timeline where someone's probably getting ready to transition to VR or needs to be having some of those questions and reaching out if you need. Um, and then also there's some information on the hub that can dig into some of this a little bit more. I was gonna get the link, but I don't have it. Cole, if you thank you, already on it. So just making sure everyone's aware of what's going on and it's all following the person's goal. With that, I'm gonna move to the next slide and just we want to make sure to clarify what is covered under each service and then also what's not covered. And this is all coming from the CBSM. So it's just a summary of a few points. There's more details there. So exploration is for the informed choice process. This is if someone is needing some support to make a decision if they want to work, like what would it look like? What would it do for their benefits? Benefits is covered by all the employment services. You can always learn about your benefits and what work will do with them. There's remote supports in combination with in-person services. So again, recap, informed choice process. And then shifting to what is not covered by exploration, plan activities are not covered by exploration. Exploration shouldn't be used to like increase the timeline for plan. This is really specific to the informed choice process. And once someone says, yes, I want to work, then they should move to plan. It can be, you can have exploration for a year. You don't have to. Exploration is not a prerequisite for plan. Exploration isn't covered in a facility. These are intended to be a service that is out learning what it's like to work, having conversations about that. So experiential. That being said, if there are activities that like the nature of the activity wouldn't change or like the learning wouldn't change, those things can be done in a center like conversations with peers or um, looking up your benefits like that. Doing that in a center versus the community isn't going to change like the experience of it. Job shadowing really kind of does need to be in the community to get the full experience of what that job would look like. Um, Reminder that exploration is not available for anyone who's enrolled in high school or a transition program. VRS and the schools, IDA provide similar services. So, and enrolled means the entire time that you're enrolled in school. Like you're still enrolled during the summer. You're still enrolled even if you don't go to school Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you go to the school on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So just a reminder, they would need to go to VR or the schools for any exploration type activities. Plan. I know this is a lot of repeat information that you are all aware of. Once someone's made that informed choice decision, either through conversation or exploration, people go to plan. They do that assessment, develop a job goal. A lot of people are doing that through discovering your personal genius. Can set up a small business, micro enterprise, self-employment stuff. Benefits, learning about what will work do to your benefits. Planning transportation, learning how to take the bus if you're going to take the bus to work. Again, remote supports are available in combination with in-person services. Not covered is job searching. That's fine. And again, this service is not available to youth until they graduate or leave school formally. And VR doesn't have, VR and is available as well as school services. Okay, fine. Um, so applications, interviews, benefits again, fine does still cover that first 30 days of employment. Transportation, sorting that out. That's always a important thing to have in place when someone has a job. And then remote supports. So I think what's not covered by find is pretty important as well. Because this is not available for anyone who hasn't received written notice or um they haven't received written notice from VR that they're in a closed category or can no longer benefit from VR services. So this is really just saying you have to go to VR before coming to the waiver for find, and you have to have that documentation from VR. So those two things are required. And a provider, so people will talk about the wait list, like if there's a wait list for VR. And I just want to clarify like VR's wait list and a provider's wait list. So a provider having a wait list for VR find services isn't a reason to authorize waiver find. It's really relies on VR. And someone would be put on a VR wait list if they're in a closed category. So really kind of keeping in mind, are they in a closed category? Have they gotten a letter saying they're in a closed category? Or have they been found that they can no longer benefit from VR services and having that letter? So there should be very few people who are authorized waiver find at this point because VR has not closed all categories. And the majority of people on waivers are in the category that's open. So reminder, that's important. Also, same thing for people in school, age 19 through 22 who are enrolled in school. Find isn't available for them. Supports. And this is that ongoing job coaching, whatever supports people need to learn work skills and build relationships, so soft skills that they need to maintain employment in the community. Any accommodations, learning about, again, what benefits, what the impact of work is on your benefits, managing those small businesses that anyone has set up. And then remote supports are also available, again, in combination with in-person services. And so what's not covered is work in a facility. Um, you can have group services up to 4 people or 6 people. And then finding support for a second job. People do need to go back to plan or find stages, depending if they want to do summer planning for a second job, or if they want to go find a second job, it would be going back to VR. So just because someone's completed VR and found a job, they will need to, we can't authorize find at that point. They will still need to go back to VR. Did you have a question, Cole? Or were you going to make a comment?
Yeah.
And just to clarify, People can continue receiving employment support services while also going back to plan or find. But employment support services should not be the ones helping them with that process to find a second job.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, you can have employment support while you're looking for something else. Can have it as long as you want. Um, are we good if I answer this question, Cole, or do you want to wait?
Uh,
Go ahead.
Okay. So, in the chat, there's a question of regarding EDS find, how long is it appropriate for a client to sit on the wait list prior to authorizing it with a provider via the waiver? So, I'll answer that in two ways. If someone's put on a wait list maintained by VR and they have the documentation that says they're in a closed category and they're in that closed category, um, EDS find can be authorized at that point. If someone is been found, they go through the VR process, they're eligible, and they're just waiting for a provider, um, that's not a time that the waiver can authorize services. If they're waiting on a provider, like for example, if they're on a wait list at provider ABC or their VR staff, they do need to be on that wait list until they're served. They can't go to the waiver just because there's a wait list for an intake with VR. So let me try and recap that. If they're in a closed, so that's where it gets a little tricky, kind of using wait list in these two different ways, like a wait list from VR and a wait list at a provider. So I would think about it, are they in a closed category? If they're in a closed category and they have that documentation from VR, then you can authorize find under the waiver. If they are not in a closed category, then they do need to be served by VR. So hope that helps. Let me read this question too. Um, actually, maybe I'm going to come back to that one, Beth. I want to make sure we get through the rest of our information, but I will address it. That's an important question. Or do we have time? I'll just do it. I'll go through these questions. We can run through the rest of it pretty quickly. So we cannot change the UNMN process. This isn't set up by the state. This is federal. This is the CMS and RSA that Voc Rehab are under, have said that the waiver is the payer of last resort. We cannot change that. VR has to be the one that pays first. So that is just how it is, unfortunately. We're doing what we can to, increase capacity on the DHS side as E1MN. We're working to help smooth the process out. But this is state and federal policy requirements that we do this. And then closed category. So I will also drop in, maybe you can pull it, Cole. In the CBSM, there's the guidance on authorizing employment services that gives some more information on what a closed category is. Let me pull it up here real quick. Yeah, let's make it go faster. There we go. So this is what we have on the waiver side. And this is, if we scroll down, like halfway down the page, VR will determine if someone's ineligible because they don't meet an open priority of service category. And that is something that VR determines based on capacity and funding. And they have closed 3 of the 4 categories. And those categories are based on what they refer to as functional limitations. If someone has 1 or 2 or 3 or more than 3. So at this point, people who have, if I'm remembering right, 1 to 3 functional limitations. Again, this is like the official language from VR. Those are the categories that are closed. So if everyone needs to go through the process to be determined eligible through VR. VR will say you're in one of those closed categories. Here's your letter. So sorry, we can't help you. And at that point, if they have a waiver, they can come to the waiver. As it is now, the category with the larger amount of functional limitations is still open. So VR does their assessment, they do the intake, they figure all of that out, and then they're providing services to those people. And the majority of people on a waiver are in that category. So the majority of people should still be receiving job searching from VR and not the waiver. So again, the person will get that documentation from VR, and if they want, they can share it with their case manager. They could do that directly, they could do that through My Vault, but that will be sent to the person, and the case manager is responsible to have that or to like see and know that has been received before authorizing waiver find. So again, we know it's challenging and it is federal requirement, so we can't not do it because it's easier. I would also, program integrity is a big concern as well. So keeping that in mind, we want to make sure that we're following the rules. If I had it handy, I could drop the link to VR's definition of closed categories, but it always takes me a minute to find it. But your local office can help if you are connected with them. And if you have more specific questions, feel free to reach out to us through the E1MN form, and we can help dig into those. Sometimes it's easier to talk through a specific case. So support is always available. But let's shift and keep moving to pre-voke. I'll run through pre-voke and day services, and then we can go through some questions about what if it's not done right. So pre-voke is designed as a service to support people who want competitive employment or they want paid employment in the community. It's designed to help people learn these fundamental work skills, they call it. So kind of following instructions, communication, problem solving, some, attendance, those things, getting some resume building experience. So again, I do want to emphasize that it is a service moving to competitive employment. That's the ultimate goal of pre-voke. And there's also remote supports that are available with that as well. So what's not covered, stuff that's covered by VR or IDEA, training for a specific job. Like it shouldn't be training you for this type of job in the community. It's really focused on those general skills that help support working at a job. And it is not covered beyond 3 years. There is that, you can add another year if there's certain circumstances like a disruption. And so you can basically have it for 4 years, if the person started after January 11th, 2021. So that 4 years, we have reached that 4 years. So, at that point, ideally, people are moving from pre-voc to plan or something like that because they've worked and learned the skills that they need and want, to have community employment. So that is going to shift me to day services. And the difference between pre-voc and day services is, there's several, but pre-voc is for people who are working towards employment. Day services is for kind of life enrichment, communication. Again, this is all just pulled from the CBSM, so it's just highlighting a few elements. Communication, community access, independent living, decision making, budgeting, all of that stuff. There's a remote support option as well. But I do want to shift a little bit more to what's not covered by day services. And anything work related is not covered by day services. That includes anything that someone is being paid a sub-minimum wage for. That does have to be done under pre-voc. And people cannot shift those activities to day services once they reach the pre-voc time limit. So important to note that. Also, this is, again, not a service that's available for people under 22, school age youth and adults under 22 without proper documentation. And the CBSM goes into more detail about what that documentation is and how to send it through. So really wanted to focus on separate what's under pre-voc, what's under day services. They're not the same. Can't just move from work activities to day services when people hit that time limit. And you can have day services if you have employment too. Like you can do both. Wraparound services are great to fill in days and okay, so if you find that things are being delivered incorrectly, there's some questions that I think you can go through to help decide next steps. And always starting with what was the person assessed for, what was authorized and what was provided. So really finding out what's their goal? What's the service that supports them to that goal? And is that service being provided, or is there like a disconnect between one of those? I think it's important to know, is this just a one-time issue? Is this widespread at a provider when there's consistently services being provided incorrectly? Is it widespread at a lead agency or contracted case management agency? Does it involve billing the waiver when VRS or IDA should pay for the service? Or is it something where it's like something incorrect within waivered services, or should the waiver not even be paying for this? So what happens, and what the next steps would be are going to be based on some of these questions. So these are really just how to start thinking about what the next steps should be and what corrective actions need to happen. And once you work through these, reaching out to us through the E1MN form or through the DSD contact form, I think that's going to be where you'll get the specific recommendations. It's hard to give a blanket, do this always or do that always, when there's a lot of different situations going on. CBSM is always a great place to start. And it doesn't always answer every question, but good place to look and start. The guidance for authorizing services can get into some more of these details about closed categories or what's available for youth. There's Provider Resource Center. Unfortunately, we did include the report fraud link. We don't need it. We're just giving resources to help you all find the information that you need if you need any more support in answering some of these questions. But we are certainly available to help sort through whatever's going on. So that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And I know we've got quite a bit of time still. So there's not a lot with the licensing moratorium. So any questions before we shift into that? We can keep moving if you want. And you can always, again, reach out with any specific questions. We can set up a one-to-one meeting or emails. I'll just keep moving along to the licensing. So I think you all are probably aware, it's been out there kind of what to do with the licensing moratorium. And I'm going to put a positive spin on this. And we know that there's been a long wait list for employment providers to become 245D licensed and enrolled, like over 2 years. And that wait list is gone now. That's been eliminated. There's the moratorium. There's no, new providers coming in, no new services being added, except when there's a need. So the requests need to go through the lead agency or tribal nation, and it's either person specific or based on regional need. And I think that is where the space where it could potentially be easier for us, because we know there's a lot of need for waivered services. And if that needs demonstrated, like on a county level, or even, beyond one county, that's a reason to submit a request for an exception. I don't know the timeline that it's taking to do those, but my guess is it's faster than 2.5 years. So hopefully we can have more people, have providers that are enrolled faster when there is that need. We know there's counties where there's a pretty big lack and gap in services. So I'm gonna try and approach that in a positive way. It might be faster now. And I think you all should have someone who's designated at your lead agency who's managing those requests. So I don't know that there's a lot of support we can offer, but if there is, or you have, let us know if there's anything we can do to help with that. It's really going to be based on I think the data that you have on people who are waiting for a waiver provider. Oh, which brings us to MTI and how they can provide some support to build capacity. But I'll just give a quick second for any other questions before we hand it off to our friends at MTI. Great. Well, Andrea, I saw you. Welcome.